Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm here to give you my May wrap-up. So this is my very first wrap-up on YouTube and I hope it will be the first of many. In May I read 6 books, which is quite good for me. I usually read about 1 book a week, but lately I've been doing quite well, which might have a little bit to do with me setting TBRs for myself recently. If you want to know more about that, go watch my June TBR. I talk all about it in that video. I've now read a total of 25 books this year, which means I'm already halfway through my goal of 50 books this year, and we're not even halfway through the year yet, so that's going quite well. Anyway, let's get into my May wrap-up. The first book I finished in the month of May is this one, which is What Would Boudicca Do? Everyday Problems Solved by History's Most Remarkable Women by E. Foley and B. Coates. That's quite the mouthful. This is a non-fiction book that talks about the accomplishments of 50 amazing women from history. I read Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls last year and it's quite similar to that, only this one is actually meant for grown-ups. The fun thing is that it relates everyday problems we have to the amazing things these women from history did in their time. All the titles connect the woman in question to a common problem we find in our time. So, for example, let me take a look at the index. We have Rosa Parks and Standing Up to Bullies, or Hypatia and Being a Geek and Proud. Isabella Beaton and Beating Imposter Syndrome, Sophia Dooley Singh and Embracing Your Discomfort Zone, and all kinds of others. Like I said, there's 50 of them. And there's some great artwork in here too. I'll just look one up. For example, we have Dorothy Parker here. So Dorothy Parker and Handling Jerks. And every woman has a little drawing like this at the front of her chapter. I read this book over quite a long period of time because I only read 1 or 2 chapters at a time, but I had a lot of fun with it. There are some amazing women featured in here that I had no idea even existed or had meant quite a lot for women in general in the world. So I really enjoyed learning more about these women, or even about women I did know about, but did not know a lot about. I also really appreciated what Foley and Coates said in their afterword about these women. So I'll just look it up and read that to you. Many of our 50 suffered outrageous treatment. They were slandered, assaulted, underestimated, sidelined and erased. None of them was perfect. Some of them did terrible as well as wonderful things. They were morally complex people, but we're here to celebrate their achievements rather than how nice they were along the way. All of them triumphed, despite living in far more savagely patriarchal circumstances than we endure today. So yeah, I really appreciated that they acknowledged the fact that some of these women did morally ambiguous or even terrible things, like Boudicca herself, who burned entire settlements along with innocent people, but that is not what this book is about. That it's about the amazing things they did do. So yes, I really appreciated that. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and if you like learning about cool things women have done in history and you are into feminism, I would really recommend picking this one up. The second book I read in May was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I listened to the audiobook of it, but I liked it so much that I ended up ordering the hardback as well on Book Depository. Only I think it got lost in the mail because it still hasn't arrived yet. Anyway, I'm glad I listened to this book on audiobook because it almost seems as if it was written to be an audiobook. I don't think that's really the case, but it's perfectly suited for it anyway. And people all over BookTube have been raving about this book non-stop, and I'm just gonna jump on the bandwagon because I adored this. It's a fiction novel written as a non-fiction oral history. It's about this band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and they had one huge hit record in the 70s, and everybody knew them and loved them back then, but then they suddenly split up and nobody knew why, until now, when this person is writing a book about the band and interviewing the members of the band and people that surrounded them during that time, to know what has happened and to find out the truth. Only this all happened 40 years ago, maybe more, maybe less, and everyone has their own version of the truth. So that was really interesting to see everyone recount what they believe happened, and they recounted from their point of view. Only a lot of things didn't really match up, and that made this book really strong, I think. I think it's magnificently done, and I'm not sure why the format works, because you'd think that reading a type of interview style or just people talking might become boring after some time, but it really didn't. Maybe that also had to do with the fact that I listened to the audiobook, but I think I'll be rereading this in a physical form soon-ish. I say that a lot and I end up never doing it, but who knows, maybe with this one. And I think I'll still enjoy it on paper. I'm also really into 70s music, so I had a lot of fun reading about this time and all the things these people got up to, and the other artists they talked about as well. I obviously ended up giving this one 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. My third book of the month was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is of course the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I actually filmed a separate video on my thoughts on this book and the film, which I saw as soon as I finished the book. And that one hasn't gone up yet. I think it will come up this month. So if you want to know my extended thoughts, I guess, on this book and this story and the film, then look out for that. But anyway, I'm a Lord of the Rings newbie. I never read the books until now. Well, that's not entirely true. I read the first book when I was 13 or 14, and I didn't read the first book as a whole. I read the first 100 pages and then I was kind of done with it. I got bored and I thought this story isn't for me. But I have been saying I want to read this series over the years quite a lot, and one of my best friends is a huge fan of this series, so I promised her that this year I would finally at least read the first book, and I think I'm going to read the other two as well later on this year. I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really love the world and the maps and the details and the entire concept of the story, as well as just the history and the myth that has become The Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. But I didn't really love the way it was written down. I got bored at points because some parts of the story just kept going on forever, and some of the exciting bits actually happened very fast. And yeah, that didn't do much for my reading experience. So the fourth book I read in May is The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, and I actually did a full review on this one as well as the film, and that is up on my channel already. So if you want to watch that, I'll put a link in the top thingy. Just click the little eye on the top right of the screen and you'll find it. This is a YA contemporary novel about Natasha and Daniel, who meet in New York one day. And Daniel is convinced that they are meant to be together and that they will fall in love before the end of the day. And Natasha has other things on her mind, because she and her family are illegal immigrants and they will be deported later that same day actually, and she is trying her best to find a way so they will be able to stay in America. So Natasha and Daniel end up spending the day together with all of this other stuff going on in the background, and love happens, obviously. So a quick overview of my thoughts. I thought this was a little underwhelming. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, and that was mostly because I liked the things going on in the background of their love story. I didn't buy the whole insta-love thing, but I liked their cultural backgrounds and learning more about that. And I thought the format of the book was quite good as well. It had short chapters told from their perspectives, but also from perspectives of strangers they happen to meet in the streets or the places they go. And I enjoyed that. I know a lot of people really love this book, but to me it was just okay. So the fifth book I read in May is Our Dark Duet by V.E. Schwab, which is the second book in the Monsters of Verity trilogy. The first book is This Savage Song, and I read that one in January of this year. And I ended up loving both of these books and the duology as a whole, and I gave both of them 5 out of 5 stars. So this is a YA fantasy duology about Kate Harker and August Flynn, and about a city that is divided in 2 halves. Callum Harker, who is Kate's father, rules North City, I believe, with an iron fist, and you have Henry Flynn, who is August's father, who tries to keep South City together. And the difficult part about this whole thing is that the city is basically infested with monsters. These monsters are born basically when a human being commits an act of violence, and that's all these monsters want as well. They want violence and they want to eat humans or drink their blood. So it's not a really fun place to live in, especially not after dark, which is when these monsters come out mostly. Also, I forgot to mention that Callum Harker and Henry Flynn are mortal enemies. These books are really dark and quite savage at times, but I actually like them for that. I love both of the main characters, but for very different reasons, because they're both very different characters. And I was hooked the entire way through, especially with the second one. But I think with the first one as well, only I read that one a few months ago, so I don't really remember that clearly. But I know with Our Dark Duet that I started reading it and I was back into the story right away again, and there was suspense, there were high stakes all the way through, and I was just completely engrossed and invested in the story. And the writing style is amazing as well. I had forgotten about that actually when I started reading Our Dark Duet, that was something I loved in This Savage Song, so that was a nice surprise. These are the first books I've read by Victoria Schwab, but I definitely want to read more because I really enjoyed these. And I really like the ending as well. Endings can often make or break an exciting story or books like this, but for me the ending really made it. So if you like dark stories that involve monsters and that investigate the difference between good and evil and right and wrong, and also looks at if it really is that black and white, then you'll definitely enjoy this duology. The sixth and final book in this wrap-up is a reread for me, and that is The Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants by Anne Brashares. I absolutely loved this series when I was a teenager. Back then I reread a lot. I read the Harry Potter books a lot, obviously, and this was another series that I just kept reading over and over again. I only found out recently that there is apparently a 5th book in the series. I only knew about 4 of them, but I think the 5th book came out a little later as well. But I still have that one to read for the first time, apparently. Anyway, this book centers around a group of 4 friends, Carmen, Lena, Tibby and Bridget, and they have to spend their first summer apart from each other for the first time in their lives. Before the summer starts, they come across a pair of pants which miraculously fits all 4 of them perfectly, even though they have very different body types. And they decide to send these pants around from one friend to another, and to make that unite them during their summer apart. It was so much fun to reread this. I actually listened to it on audiobook, and it was the first time for me to experience this story in English, because I had the translated books in Dutch when I was a teenager, and I had so much fun with it. In the end, I nearly broke down and cried, which would have been unfortunate because I was actually out and about on a walk at the time with my headphones, and it would have been a little embarrassing if I would have walked along just sobbing, which I felt like doing because there were lots of other people around as well. So it's good I managed to keep it together. One thing I noticed is that the book and the film have apparently meshed together a bit in my memory over time. So some things came as a bit of a surprise to me, and That was actually quite fun. It added an extra layer to my reading experience, I guess. I was also actually surprised by the pace of the story, because so much happened in such a short amount of pages, or minutes in my case, and I did not remember it like that. It kind of made it feel like the story was over before it had really begun, and I think if I had read this book for the first time now, that would have meant I wouldn't have been as attached to the characters as I was now, because I knew them from my memory, and on the page or in the audiobook, I felt like you didn't really get to know them that much because it all happened so quickly. And I do have to say, there were some aspects that I didn't really like anymore now that I read the book as an adult. The main thing I'm talking about here is the relationship, if you can call it that, between Bridget and Eric. Bridget is 15 in this book, and Eric is a coach at the soccer camp she goes to. So that means he is in a position of power, and he is also quite a lot older than she is. And he knows that, and he knows that it's wrong. I think as a reader you were meant to ship them together, and I certainly did that when I read these books as a teenager. And I know more is to come in the next couple of books, although I don't remember what exactly is coming anymore. But yeah, I definitely no longer ship them reading this book as an adult, because it is kind of iffy, and it's not exactly romanticized, or I don't think it is. I'm not really sure, because it is emphasized that what they're doing is wrong, and especially what he is doing is wrong. But as a reader, I think you're supposed to want it to happen. And that made me feel a little uncomfortable. Nevertheless, I did have fun rereading this, and I ended up giving the book 4 out of 5 stars. So that's my wrap up for the month of May. My favorite book was probably Daisy Jones and the Six, but our Dark Duet comes in at a close second, I think. So now I want to hear from you. What was your favorite book you read in May? Did you have a good reading month? Did you read any of the books I talked about today? Did you like them? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to chat to you about it. Please like this video if you liked it, and perhaps even subscribe if you want to see more of me. Thank you for watching, and until next time. Bye!